and welcome to January's Kitchen. Today I'm really excited because we're going to make wheat meat. You may have seen it being called seitan, but I like to call it wheat meat. Now what it is, it's a meat alternative, super easy to make, easy to freeze, and you can do so much with it. All right, what we're going to need today to make wheat meat, and we're actually making two different kinds. So we're making kind of a beef version and a chicken version. All right, what we're going to need is some vital wheat gluten. Vital wheat gluten is like a flour, and you can find this in your bulk section, usually near the flours, or you can buy it in a package. We need soy flour. Soy flour, again, should be in your bulk section, or you can buy that in a package. This is nutritional yeast. You can find this in your bulk section as well. Some people call it nooch, and you may have seen it referred to that way in some vegan recipes. Okay. On this side, we have Worcestershire sauce. No one says that right, including me. I have liquid smoke, totally optional. This is really handy to have. It's really good in beans to give you a little teeny bit of a smoky ham type flavor. But it gives you just a little bit of that. I cooked this meat outside, even though it's not meat and I didn't cook it outside. And then we have browning and seasoning sauce. You'll find this in the grocery store, probably near the seasonings or the powder gravy mixes and that sort of thing. It's very, very handy for flavor. Okay. I have garlic powder that I got in bulk, which always tastes better than the kind that just comes in a package. And then this is just sea salt. All right, so the basic recipe, and you may have seen these recipes before. A lot of times what they'll do is they make the basic recipe with no seasoning and no flavor at all. Then they put all the flavor in the broth that it's boiled in, because once we make this, we're going to boil it or simmer it in a big pot of water. Okay, so they put all the flavorings in the water, and then it cooks in there, and then you end up throwing away all this water with all this flavoring in it. It's crazy. I just boil it in plain water. You can put salt in the water if you want to, which is probably a good idea. And I put the flavorings in the seitan or the wheat meat itself. Okay, so here's how we're going to do that. We're going to start with the wheat gluten. We need a half a cup of this. You can totally double this recipe because this stuff freezes really well after it's cooked. Okay, so it's about a half a cup there of the vital wheat gluten. I have it right there, vital wheat gluten. And the soy flour will be just a quarter of a cup. That's about right. Okay. We're going to put about 1/8 of a cup of your, it smells like cheese. Love this stuff. Okay, so about 1/8 of a cup, maybe scant. This is like pure flavor. And if you do a lot of vegan cooking, you already know this stuff makes a wonderful broth. And cheesy sauces. It's one way to make cheese sauces with this. There's several different ways. All right, so we have that. I'm going to put just a little bit of garlic. We don't want it to taste like garlic, but we're going to put a couple dashes of garlic and, of course, salt. A couple dashes of salt. So what you've got here is just the powder. We're going to mix that up. Make sure the lumps are out of it. That soy flour can be lumpy. That all mixed in nicely there. And again, like with all of the recipes, definitely experiment with them and see what you can create. I have a half a cup of water here, and so that's again part of the basic recipe is half a cup of water. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide this water in half So I'm going to put 1/4 cup in here. And so I've got 1/4 cup in each container here. I'm going to take this, and you can measure this if you like. I'm not really big on measuring, but I'm going to put, the reason I'm dividing this is because we're making 2 kinds of wheat meat. One will be a beef, and one will be more of a chicken flavor. So I'm going to put approximately half of this in this bowl. That's about right. These are going to be a little different. So for the beef, we're going to use the Worcestershire sauce. Just a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 squirts. Okay, so it's making it darker. So you'll see the color will be a little bit different. I'm going to put a tiny bit of the liquid smoke. Again, this is optional. Some people don't like the way that tastes. So I'm talking about just about a teaspoon of that. And just a little splash of the browning liquid. So that's going to be about a teaspoon as well. And this is going to give it a little bit of a different color. And you can see how dark that is. Okay, so I'm going to add that to this one. Mix this up a little bit. What's going to happen is, and what we want is for it to form a nice ball. And this is so fun, especially if you like to touch raw food. I know I do. Love it. Okay. Okay. So take our little, isn't that awesome? Look at that. Look at that. You like that, huh? You want a piece of that? All right, so you decide what, you don't want to knead this too much, but what shape do you want it to be in? Do you want it to be more flat? Now this is going to double in size as it cooks, but isn't that cool? That's that wheat gluten, and I know that it's not supposed to be good for you, but you know what? If you're in the mood for meatloaf, and you don't eat meat, a little bit of this in there, that's a great substitute if you're not sensitive to gluten. Gluten's in all kinds of stuff, from bread to cookies, just anything that has wheat in it. And I've got boiling water behind me that I'm going to add that to. Okay, all right, I think I got it a little bit too thin, but sticky. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just throw this in the boiling water. And what I want to do, though, is I don't want it to boil. I want it to just simmer. So we don't want a full rolling boil, but we want a small simmer. But we do want to bring it to a boil. So I've got the salt water there. I'm putting this in there, see? Whoop. And just drop it in. And if you like, you can put the lid on about halfway and turn it way down. Now we have our chicken version here. I'm going to take a little bit more of our, I got a piece of Satan on me. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit more of our nutritional yeast, and I'm actually going to add that to the water. So that's going to be about 1/16 of a cup, or a couple of tablespoons. Mix that up, and you can see the color. So it's going to give you more of a yellow color. And you can smell that's good. We're not going to use the liquid smoke, and we're not going to use the W sauce. But I am going to use just a little bit of the browning here. So that's about a teaspoon. Mix that up. And you can see it's a little lighter. Okay. And we're going to put that in there. Mix that up. We should get a nice ball again, like we had. But you'll see in this one, not nice, it just kind of comes together. You'll see in this one, see the color is different. It's more of a, I mean, you've got some color to it. It's a little bit of darkness, but it's more of a yellow color. Okay. All right. That's nice. So I'm going to smash that down just a little bit. Again, you want to knead it just a little bit, but not much because it can start getting tougher. Okay. I'm going to drop that in our already boiling water. These are going to go about 40 minutes. It also depends on what you're going to do with them. If you're going to cook them quite a bit afterwards, they may not need to cook that long. And you can tell if you cut it in half, and you can see the inside will appear to be a little bit doughy and raw. You want it to look about the same all the way through. So I'm going to say about 40-45 minutes. It also depends on the size that you're working with. If you have a really big piece, you're going to want to cook, or a thick piece, it may have to cook a little bit longer. But you might want to check it after about 35 to 40 minutes. What we have now is our almost finished product. And so these came out of the water after simmering for about 40 minutes. And you can see here the difference in color. So we have the beef one right here. It's a little grayer, and it really actually does look like if you took some beef and boiled it, especially some ground beef. And look at the consist. See how that moves? It's spongy. Okay. All right, and you can see inside too that it's a little bit fibrous. So it does have a little bit of consistency and texture of actual meat. All right. Now what we're going to do with this one is I'm going to show you how this can turn into what looks like a cooked ground beef. Okay. Take a paper towel here and just squeeze some of the water out of it, because these things are going to be waterlogged a little bit. Whoops. So, and also before you freeze them, you want to squeeze not all the water, but some of it out. Okay. Squeeze out, or you can do it over the sink, however you want to do it. You don't want to do all of it. All right, so I'm just going to take this and I'm going to tear it. Oops. Into a couple pieces because my food processor is small. But again, I mean, you make a big batch, throw a bunch of it in here, and use that ground beef for ground wheat meat, actually. You can use that for chilies, spaghetti sauce. There's even some really awesome recipes to make meatloaf. If you don't want to use textured vegetable protein, which is not a whole different thing, it's a different thing than what we're making here. Okay. All right, so I put these in the food processor. Now I'm just going to, okay. All right, this is awesome. Look at this. Does that look like ground beef or what? You can do a little finer if you like. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? Throw that in chili. Nobody's going to know the difference. I don't even know what they're, oops, made a mess. But really, this is just really, really, really nice. Really nice. Make note, though, that there's no oil in this. Now, you can add that to the batter before you cook it if you want to. But if you were cooking this as if you were making taco meat, you're going to want to add a little bit of oil. This ground beef has so much fat in it. Even when you drain it, it's still going to have the fat. So just keep that in mind, okay? Now we are left with our little piece of chicken wheat meat. What we're going to do with this, and you can cut this up and use it for fajitas or any time you need little chunks of chicken, chicken fried rice, anything like that. And it's super easy to cut, or you can use scissors. What I'm doing here is I'm cutting it into nuggets. Okay. All right, so we have our little pieces here. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to this bowl. About a quarter of a cup, about an eighth of a cup actually, of warm water. And this is it's an egg substitute that we use sometimes in recipes. Woo! My grease is popping. All right, this is flaxseed, and it's just ground up flax seeds. You're going to want to keep these on hand just because they're so good for you, and you can add them to different things. But if you add too much, you'll notice that it gives things a slimy texture. Now that's not always good, but it is good when you need egg and you don't use egg, you don't want to use egg, or you're strict vegan and you don't use egg. So we put that in there and we mix that up. And if you stick your finger in there, you can feel that it's slimy like egg whites. You're not going to be able to make a souffle with this, but it will help breading stick to things. You can also just use soy milk if you want to do that, but this is just a little bit more substance. Okay. All right, so what I have here is our panko breadcrumbs, and I've put them on a plate. Now, any seasoning that you want to add to those, however you do your breading for chicken or fish, you can do that, but I'm just going to put salt and fresh ground pepper, which is always tastes so much better than pepper, a regular box of peppers. So we got the fresh ground pepper and, of course, our garlic powder. Another one of my favorites. Okay. All right, so mix that up a teeny bit. That's going to be good. And I'm going to put my nuggets. Yep. I'm going to mix those up in there. You can see that the mixture is coating these. It's sticky. Okay, so take your slimy, sticky thing here, and then we're going to bread them, just like you would bread anything else. Wow, look at that. Oh, man. Look how that sticks to it. Oh, awesome. That is nice. Okay. We'll do a couple of those. Now remember that these are cooked already because we cooked them. So they don't have to go in the pan for very long. We have our little breaded nuggets here, and we are going to throw them in the hot grease. Again, you can deep fry these, but I'm just pan frying them. Our little nuggets are out of the grease. I'm going to put some extra salt on here, although there's some in the barbecue sauce. All right. I'm going to take my little nuggets. You can see they held together pretty well. I mean, you don't have to use panko breadcrumbs. You can use whatever breading that you like. I just thought it would be fun to have them a little bit crispy. So I'm going to take one. When it comes to the meat substitutes, just completely experiment. Put all kinds of things in there and just see how it turns out. You can create all sorts of types of flavors and so forth. Just remember a few things. It's going to need to cook at least about 35 to 40 minutes in water. If you know what recipe you're going to use them for, maybe a little bit less than that if you're going to cook it. If you grind it, use a little bit of oil so it'll get more of a ground beef type feel and texture because there's no oil in there. And for the chicken, make sure, well, for both of them, make sure that after they come out of the water that you squeeze them really well to get the extra water out. You don't want it all out. You want to squeeze them pretty well. Now you can take these and put them in Ziploc bags and put them in the freezer, and they're going to be just fine. They'll stay in there for quite some time for when you're ready to use it. Or you can grind them up and put it in the freezer and just use packets of ground beef if you want to do that. So there's our wheat meat. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be doing some gravies. On our next episode, we're going to do just a basic white gravy, like biscuits and gravy type gravy, and then we're going to do a brown gravy that would substitute most beef gravies that you might put on mashed potatoes. Thank you for coming to January's Vegan Kitchen. Bye.